Chapter When I'll Wipe It. Being plotted. Boom. A thunder sounded, accompanied by lightning across the dark sky, flashing like daylight. Soon it started to rain heavily. Bai Jin came out of the company and looked at the dark sky. The rainwater invaded the storefront along with the cold wind and slapped on Qingyan's body. She stretched out her hand to touch the rainwater that had not yet fallen to the ground. It was ice cold, which was very similar to her mood at this time. Put your hands down to get the umbrella in your bag, huh? She forgot to bring her umbrella after get-off work. After taking a look at the heavy rain that was still falling, it didn't seem to mean anything. Bai Jin put her bag on her head to avoid getting wet. She felt a little aggrieved for no reason while walking on the street. You said she was a salesperson, but she was also an intern. Who did you offend? You were made things difficult for you everywhere, and you had to smile when your boss scolded you. As a result, people didn't treat you as a human being. The more Bai Jin thought about it, the angrier and aggrieved she became, so she simply pulled the bag off her head and threw it away. The beautiful bag was thrown straight down the overpass like a kite that had lost its string and fell to the ground with countless splashes of water. The sky was covered with dark clouds and the rain was still falling, and the thunder was roaring, as if laughing at her for being so unlucky. The sound of cars on the street continued, which was so harsh to my ears. The cold wind hit the white hibiscus that had already been wet by the rain, making her shiver, sneeze. She couldn't help but sneeze. He stretched out his hand and rubbed his nose. If he had known better, he wouldn't have thrown the bag away. This would be a good thing, as he would have walked far away. Reaching out to pick up the messy bag on the ground, she looked up and saw a man not far away wearing a t-shirt with a scantily clad beauty in his arms. The moment the man turned his head, Bai Jin opened her eyes wide and clearly saw the man's profile. Brother-in-law! Even if this man turned into ashes, she would still recognize him. Okay, this stinky man actually had a mistress behind my sister's back. See if I don't kick you. You can't be humane anymore. Without thinking, you run forward and hit me with a big mouth. The beautiful woman next to her reacted quickly when she saw this. She turned around and glared at Bai Jin and shouted, "Who are you? Why did you hit him?" Bai Jin looked at the woman who was clearly angry but still pretending to be weak and wanted to give her a big mouth. Ignoring her, he turned to look at the man angrily. "Xia Qinghan, who is this woman? I really didn't expect you to betray my sister and have another woman outside less than a year after getting married. Are you worthy of my sister? I will go back and tell my sister to ask you to divorce. An ungrateful and cheating man like you is not worthy of my sister." After saying this, the couple turned and left without looking at her. Xia Qinghan saw a flash of panic in his eyes when he saw what happened. He quickly grabbed Bai Jin and said in a panic, "Xiao Jin, listen to me. She is my secretary. Not what you think. I will explain it to your sister. So don't tell your sister." Bai Jin stared at Xia Qinghan. If eyes could kill, she would have killed him with holes all over him to vent her anger on her sister. Secretary. Look at which secretary is being hugged by the general manager. It's not what I thought. What's that like? You don't want to say that your secretary happened to have an injured foot and you kindly help her, right? If so, you don't have to make excuses. Waiting for you to explain to my sister. I'm afraid my sister will never know that you betrayed her in this life. He broke free from the shackles and turned around to leave. She wanted to tell her sister about this, and she couldn't let her get hurt by this heartless man. When Xia Qinghan saw that she was leaving, he thought that the matter must not be exposed. Otherwise, all his efforts and forbearance over the past year would be in vain. Thinking of this, a hint of viciousness flashed in his eyes. He looked at the beauty next to him and stepped forward to block Bai Jin, who was walking forward. His eyes showed a fierce light. "Xiao Jin, you should stay away from this matter. I advise you to pretend not to see this matter today. We will continue as before. If you tell your sister about this matter, believe me, I will make you regret it." Facing Xia Qinghan's power, Bai Jin smiled contemptuously. Hey, this was the first time in her life that she had been threatened. The corners of his mouth raised, and his tone was faint. Regret? What's the way to regret? Tell me if it's enough to make me regret it. Humph, what a scumbag. You actually dare to threaten me. I will show you later what it means to have no descendants." Hearing Bai Jin's disdainful tone, his proud vanity was instantly shattered. He lost face, and his face turned livid. "Bai Jin, don't toast me, and you'll have to drink the wine as a penalty." As soon as he said this, Bai Jin kicked Xia Qinghan's legs angrily, but Xia Qinghan was not a vegetarian, so he stretched out his hand to catch Bai Jin's kicked leg. Bai Jin turned around and hit Xia Qinghan's face when he saw something was wrong. Xia Qinghan was in pain, and Bai Jin looked at him with a smile. "I don't know when the heavy rain will stop, but the sky at night is still covered with dark clouds, as if a bigger storm is ready at any time." "Bai Jin," Xia Qinghan growled with a dark face. "Your sister-in-law, I'm here," Bai Jin replied with a smile on her lips. "Come on, get out of the way, get out of the way." At this time, several people carried the big tree that was scorched by lightning and walked forward. As he walked, he shouted, "Oh, I really don't know what happened. This is the third big tree that has been scorched by lightning tonight." The sky was still covered with dark clouds, and there was lightning from time to time, but no thunder. Bai Jin looked at the scorched tree suspiciously and smacked his lips. This chop was so skillful. It even made lines. Xia Qinghan looked at the beautiful woman next to him at this moment, and a hint of calculation came into his mind. No one could stop what Xia Qinghan wanted. When he saw a man packing up the wires, he quickly knocked Bai Jin down while Bai Jin was thinking, grabbed the wires, and threw them into the water. By the time Bai Jin reacted, he had already been thrown into the water by Xia Qinghan. The wire was tightly attached to Bai Jin's body, and a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky. Bai Jin's brain suddenly shut down, and the electric current in his body was running back and forth. Before he passed out, Bai Jin complained in his heart, "I'm going to rub it. Being plotted." Warm sunlight shines through the exquisite window curtains on the face of the woman wearing a bright red wedding dress. The breeze gently blows open the window curtains, bringing a bit of coolness to the face of the woman who seems to be still sleeping. At this time, the woman seemed to feel the coolness and slightly frowned her beautiful eyebrows. Her eyelashes, which were like thin zen wings, moved slightly. She opened her eyes faintly, and her water eyes were as clear as lake water. Anyone who saw it would have ripples in their hearts. Why does my head hurt so much? The woman's beautiful eyebrows were tightly knitted together. She wanted to reach out and rub her painful head, but her wrists were tied tightly behind her back. She struggled a few times, but to no avail, which made the woman feel annoyed. "Oh shit! Who the hell tied me up?" At this moment, Mu Ran remembered that she was still fighting that bastard Xia Qinghan, and that bastard plotted against her while she wasn't paying attention. She dares to say that she has never been plotted against by others in her life. He, Xia Qinghan, is the first. Thinking of Xia Qinghan, Bai Jin naturally attributed the kidnapping to him. Suddenly my mind became hot. I raised the car curtain with my feet and went out, yelling, "Wipe it." "Xia Qinghan, you shameless bastard! How dare you tie me up? From now on you are no longer my brother-in-law." A loud curse word sounded, causing all the guards in front to instantly turn their heads and look at the woman in the carriage. A guard with a long sword on his waist frowned, and was suspicious. Although this princess was not favored in Nanfeng Kingdom, he was lucky enough to have heard of her. Her personality was gentle and dignified, but why did she change so much this time? So hard is it that the rumors are wrong? He suppressed the doubts in his heart and stepped forward to ask in a deep voice, "Princess, what are your orders?" Bai Jin looked at him in ancient clothes, and when she was angry, she caught a glimpse of the bright red wedding dress she was wearing and blinked her beautiful eyes blankly. "When did you wear this dress? Why doesn't she remember?" He raised his head blankly and looked around. His eyes suddenly widened. I saw a group of men in ancient costumes riding horses in front of them. One of them was pulling the horse, pulling the carriage. Bai Jin quickly scanned the surroundings. On the bustling street, in addition to ancient-looking houses, there were pedestrians in ancient costumes or hawkers. His mind was spinning rapidly. Have to. In this situation, either you have traveled through time or you have been kidnapped and used as an actor to film a movie. But if you think about it carefully, it's wrong. If it's a filming, why don't you have a camera or equipment? You don't even see anyone holding the script. Did she really travel through time? Is her dead soul attached to this dead ancient woman? But how did she get dressed here? Time tunnel? Just when Bai Jin was wandering in his mind, the guard with a long sword on his waist stepped forward to loosen Bai Jin's ties and asked again in a deep voice, "What are your orders from the princess?" His tone seemed to be dissatisfied because he had just ignored him, and his voice was a little louder. "Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know." The guard with a long sword on his waist didn't take him seriously at all when he heard her words, and his face turned red with anger. He thought to himself that if the heavenly master had not repeatedly told the importance of marrying the princess, he would have dealt with her as an unpopular princess. She was an unpopular princess anyway, and His Majesty would not blame him if anything happened. Now that the princess has a heavy responsibility, she can't just do whatever she wants. Ping Xia said again with anger in his heart, "Princess, what are your orders?" Now Bai Jin was sure that she had really traveled through time. She restrained her temper to prevent others from discovering her strangeness. She imitated the proper attitude of a princess on TV and said in a stiff tone, "Where are you?" "We have arrived at the territory of Dragon Flame Kingdom. I have been disrespectful and ordered the princess to be kidnapped. I hope that the princess will forgive me. It is getting late today. Please enter the inn to rest for the night before going to Beijing tomorrow." Although the guard with the sword spoke respectfully, his tone was not respectful. Even the words of forgiveness did not really mean to forgive. Bai Jin frowned in the carriage. It seemed that she had guessed correctly and had really traveled through time. He sighed silently, regaining his composure and not caring about his rudeness. Her red lips parted slightly, and she responded with a faint yes. She raised her hand to lift the curtain of the carriage, and when she saw a little girl in pink waiting below, she stretched out her hand. The girl was also smart. When she saw this, she stepped forward and helped Bai Jin get out of the carriage. Bai Jin was cautious in her heart, fearing that someone would notice something strange if she made a mistake. This sudden time travel caught her off guard, and she time traveled into a princess. I don't know which country's princess she is. She was going to find out tonight. Chapter 2, Traveling Through Time and Becoming a Spy. Entering the inn, he looked around and raised his eyebrows. Well, the interior design is not bad. Simple yet grand. In ancient times, it was considered high class to have such an inn. Under the leadership of the Saber Guard, Bai Jin entered the private room, walked around in a circle, and after looking around to find that she was satisfied, she said to the Saber Guard, who was still waiting for dispatch, "Well, you go down and rest." If she wanted to find out information, she had to let him leave quickly. After the Saber Guard left, Bai Jin called the little girl who had helped her get out of the carriage into the room. Bai Jin made sure there was no one outside the door and closed the door. Looking back at the little girl, she smiled with a smile that she thought was so charming that it would cost her her life. However, in the eyes of that little girl, that smile felt a little malicious, which made people feel scared, and the hair on their hair stood up immediately. She was stunned and said, "Princess, what are your orders for calling this slave?" Although there was something strange in his heart, he felt that the princess was different this time, but there was no trace of surprise on the surface, which made her look timid and cowardly. Seeing her submissive look, Bai Jin brought her to his side with a sharp look in his eyes. He really didn't know whether this little girl was really timid or cowardly, or if she was calm and composed inside. Apart from her, the princess, this little girl is the only girl in such a large team. She looks to be only 12 or 13 years old. She is probably the maid next to the princess. Bai Jin narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the little girl who was calm and timid on the outside and sneered inwardly. These people are really not simple. The guards are not like guards, and they have no respect for her as a princess. Unlike a maid does not have the attitude a slave should have towards her master. It seems that her name as a princess is just in vain. Oh. She didn't want to be plotted against again after she was reborn. Xia Qinghan's time was the last time. Time for a cup of tea has passed. Bai Jin didn't speak. The little girl stood there motionless. Those who did no thought she was being held captive. Bai Jin put down the teacup and said in a faint and nonchalant tone, "This princess has something that I need you to answer truthfully." When the little girl in pink heard that she had something to ask her, she nodded coquettishly. "What does the princess need from a slave?" Bai Jin looked at her timid appearance and smiled. "It's nothing. I just want to ask you what is the purpose of coming to Longyan country this time." She felt a little uneasy when she said this. She didn't know what the original owner's character was like, and she hoped not to be discovered. The little girl in pink felt suspicious when she heard her asking. The princess knew she was coming to Longyan country to get married, so why did she ask this? The princess today is indeed different from usual. The princess's eyes have never been so sharp. Could it be that she is not a princess? Thinking of this, he suddenly raised his head and a long sword appeared in his hand. His eyes were sharp. "You are not a princess. Who are you?" Bai Jin was slightly shocked to be discovered so quickly. Thinking that her body belonged to the original owner, I regained my composure. This little girl was indeed unusual. She frowned and pretended to be panicked. "I am your princess. Now I can't remember anything for some reason. I didn't know anything after waking up in the carriage. If you don't believe me, you can check it out. My head is still throbbing." The words about headache are true, but the amnesia is naturally a bit fake. In the novel, wouldn't it be possible to inherit the memory of the original owner if he traveled through time? Why don't you even give her shit? The little girl in pink clothes naturally didn't believe what she said and said coldly, "The princess has a hibiscus birthmark on her left breast. If you have it, you will be a princess." She promised His Majesty that she must ensure the safety of the princess. If this woman is not a princess, she will kill her. Bai Jin's eyes flashed, and she pulled off the red wedding dress without hesitation. Her ice-like skin was exposed, and a medium-sized and elegant-looking hibiscus flower birthmark appeared on her left chest. Bai Jin smiled. "You should believe it this time, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, the little girl in pink put away her long sword and knelt down. "I have seen the princess, and I have just offended you. So I hope the princess will punish you." There was a hint of respect in the words, and her attitude was obviously better than before. Bai Jin smiled. "Well, having a birthmark is easy to deal with. No need to waste words. She is quite lucky." She straightened her clothes and helped up the little girl who was still kneeling on the ground. "If you want to be punished, I will punish you. Tell the whole story from beginning to end without leaving a single ink." About half an hour later, Bai Jin figured out the country and era she was in. She was originally the princess of Nanfeng Kingdom. In line with the concept of adhering to the long-lasting diplomatic relations and friendship between the two countries, she went to Longyan Kingdom to get married. In fact, she was asked to work as a spy in another country to steal the world map. The sword guard was General Healy, the messenger of the marriage. On the way to get married, the original owner thought about running away, but unfortunately was caught. This is why Bai Jin's hands were tied after she woke up. "I'm going." It turns out that the original owner was 120% unwilling to get married this time. Thinking of her waking up with a dull pain in her head, she came to the conclusion that the original owner died from hitting her head. She said that she was not so lucky to be a princess, and how could such good things as eating and drinking come to her? He actually let her be a spy. Ba. What kind of agent is a spy? Well, the original owner's name is Bai Sujin. Sujin, is that the elegant hibiscus flower birthmark on her body? This name sounds really nice, huh? But she is not Bai Sujin, whose destiny is in her own hands after rebirth. She is a modern woman with a modern world view and outlook on life. Even if you travel to an imaginary ancient time, you still have to choose your own marriage partner. Taking a sip of tea, her red lips moved. "Mange, do you have a designated candidate for this wedding?" Mange is naturally the little girl in pink. She needs to find out if there is a designated person. If so, she will find a way to withdraw from the marriage. Without that, everything will be easier. Back to the princess. There is no designated candidate. Your Majesty originally selected the second prince as the marriage partner, but the Heavenly Master stopped him, saying that choosing the second prince of Longyan Kingdom would limit the scope of the princess's search for drawings. The princess should choose the marriage partner slowly, so as to have time to find the drawings. Once the time is right, the Heavenly Master will order the princess to choose the designated marriage partner. Mange was suspicious when she said this. Since the Heavenly Master has already selected the marriage partner, why should the princess choose her own marriage partner? In fact, the doubts in Manji's heart are also the doubts in Baijin's heart. Listening to the slow song, she is told that she is not the only princess of Nanfeng Kingdom, but is even better than her. She is also the most unpopular princess in Nanfeng Kingdom. Why was she the princess who finally chose to go to Longyan Kingdom to get married? Who is that Heavenly Master? Is it really as Mange said that he is just an astrologer who can divine and read the stars? Do you have to wait until the time is right to choose with your relatives? Questions popped up in Baijin's mind one after another, making her confused. It was already late at night when I looked up out of the window, and the cicadas' chirping was so clear. He sighed and ordered Mange to go down and rest. At least she still has a chance to find a way out of this slow selection of a husband. Since she came to this ancient time, it was God who was taking care of her and giving her a chance to be reborn. She didn't want to bury her freedom in this ancient time and be controlled for the rest of her life. At this time, Baijin was leaning against the window, thinking about how to get rid of the fate of being manipulated. Looking up at the twinkling stars in the night sky, there is a little confusion in the eyes. The beautiful eyes are no longer clear and transparent, as if they are dyed with a thin layer of gauze, which makes people want to lift the gauze to find out. Baijin felt her eyes hurt after not sleeping all night. When she opened the door early in the morning, she saw Mange already waiting outside. He smiled at her and said casually, "Good morning." Mango was stunned when he saw the thick dark circles on Baijin's face. Did Princess stay up all night? She then picked up a cold towel and put it on Baijin's eyes for her to apply. My eyes felt much better, so I responded lazily, "Yeah." Then I went downstairs to have some breakfast. At this time, General Healy stepped forward and said solemnly, "Princess, if you are ready, we will set off for the capital." Baijin glanced at him, raised the corners of her mouth, and said lightly, "Let's go." In the imperial palace of the capital, the civil and military officials lined up on both sides of the majestic hall. They all turned to look at the princess who had traveled thousands of miles to the Dragon Flame Kingdom to marry. She was wearing a phoenix crown. Her delicate and small face gave people a cute aura. Her beautiful eyes were as clear as lake water, and her smart eyes moved from time to time to look a little naughty. Wearing a bright red brocade robe with a phoenix pattern tied around the waist with a gold silk brocade belt, her graceful figure was displayed in front of everyone. I didn't expect this unloved princess to be so beautiful. I heard that the princess of Nanfeng Kingdom was the least favored by Emperor Nanfeng because she killed her mother and brother when she was born. Emperor Nanfeng was deeply in love with the queen and lost both the queen and son in a moment, and he ignored the princess in a rage. Now the purpose of sending this unpopular princess to marry him is of course self-evident. The palace of Longyan Kingdom is majestic and majestic. Baijin admires it from the bottom of her heart every time she goes. It's good to have money. If you just scratch it off, it would cost tens of thousands at least. Looking at the man in the main hall from a distance, wearing a dragon robe with sharp eyes and stern eyebrows, he obviously showed no expression or said a word, but she could clearly feel the invisible pressure, which made her involuntarily feel nervous, and her palms became a little sweaty. General Healy stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Healy from Nanfeng Kingdom pays homage to His Majesty Longyan. Emperor Longyan raised his hand expressionlessly. Envoys from the Nanfeng Kingdom don't need to be polite. Stay on your feet. Thank you, Your Majesty. After General, Healy stood up. He took an exquisite gift box from the man behind him and said, "Your Majesty, this is a gift from the Emperor of our country to your Majesty. Please accept it with your Majesty's approval." The eunuch took the gift box and carefully brought it to the Emperor to open it. Inside the box, he saw 2 black insects of medium size squirming on the yellow brocade and some pink liquid spit out from his mouth from time to time. Emperor Longyan felt nauseated when he saw the black bug, and his stomach was churning. When a well-informed minister saw it, he exclaimed, "This is a rare mother-in-law goo insect. I heard that Nanfeng country is rich in breeding goo insects, and it is also famous as a goo country. This mother-in-law goo insect is even rarer. Its poison can only be detoxified by the saliva of the daughter-in-law goo insects. Using other goo insects will only make the poison worse." The ministers were in an uproar, and Emperor Longyan nodded with a smile. After hearing this, he no longer felt sick looking at the goo insect, and his brows widened. "Emperor Nanfeng offered me such a treasure, and I hope that the envoy from Nanfeng Kingdom will return home to thank me." Chapter 3. The drawings are none of her business. General Healy knelt down on one knee and said respectfully, "Your Majesty Longyan, our Emperor has something to say. In addition to offering treasures, I also hope that your country will treat our princess well, and we will build a century-old good relationship between the 2 countries, and our friendship will last forever." At this time, Bai Jin received Man Ji's hint, took a deep breath and exhaled it, saying to herself that she is not afraid. She is not afraid of anything. She has never seen anything in the world. Isn't she the Emperor? He moved to the center of the hall, bowed slightly and saluted. "Su Jin pays homage to His Majesty Longyan." The voice, neither humble nor arrogant, echoed throughout the hall. The Dragon Flame Emperor straightened his body, and his eyes moved slightly. Now the news that the world blueprint has fallen to the Dragon Flame Kingdom is known to all 4 countries. At this time, the Nanfeng Kingdom sent a princess to come and get married. I am afraid that it is not just a simple marriage. This is clearly the Nanfeng Kingdom wants to plant a spy in his Dragon Flame Kingdom. Although he was angry inside, he looked okay on the outside. He raised his head and laughed, but the smile stopped at the corners of his lips. He raised his hand and said in a rich voice, "Princess, no courtesy," and then said, "The princess is the peace envoy of Longyan and Nanfeng Kingdom. She comes for peace between the 2 countries. Naturally, she is a distinguished guest of our country. There is no reason to be negligent. I wonder which of my princes does the princess want to marry? Is there any suitable candidate?" Bai Jin raised his eyes and glanced at Manga. When he saw her nodding towards him, he straightened his back and said in an unassuming voice, "Your Majesty Longyan, for the sake of the long-term friendship between the 2 countries, I hope that your Majesty will give Su Jin some time, so that Su Jin can choose the person he likes." Emperor Longyan heard this and frowned slightly. He was stalling for time just to find the world blueprint. Knowing that marrying into the royal family too early would limit the scope, he could search for blueprints within his Dragon Flame Kingdom. Humph! Emperor Nanfeng has such a good plan. Since the princess said so, I will give the princess half a year. If the princess has not found the person she likes after half a year, then I will choose one from among my several princes. What do you think, princess? Bai Jin was not upset when he saw that it could only be postponed to half a year. If this half year was used properly, it would be enough to get rid of the constraints. As for the task of stealing blueprints, well, it's none of her business. Where can I find you if my sister is gone? Bai Jin's wishful thinking was ringing in her heart, and she responded immediately. Su Jin thanked His Majesty Longyan. The next morning, Bai Jin got up early. Ancient clothes were difficult to put on, so it took a lot of effort to put them on. Ming Mange simply put her hair into a bun and took her out of the house. Emperor Longyan gave her a mansion so that she could find the right person more easily, and this was a very good show. But it was just what she wanted. She wanted to escape in these 6 months and find her way to freedom. She was not a princess. She was Bai Jin. She will not regard this princess's mission as her own. The original owner is dead, so let that mission go to hell. Walking on the bustling streets, watching the endless flow of people, Bai Jin sighed inwardly. It really deserves to be a capital city. Lively. I caught a glimpse of a wooden hairpin placed in a small stall, and it immediately caught my attention. He stepped forward and picked up the hairpin. It was a bit rough in the hand. There were some patterns engraved on the hairpin. Although it was a wooden hairpin, it looked delicate. Mange saw that she couldn't put it down holding the wooden hairpin, so she asked softly, "Princess, do you like it?" Hearing this, Bai Jin smiled and said to the old man, "I want this." Before the old man could say anything, he took out the money and handed it over. At this time, there was some noise not far away, and I saw a middle-aged man and a few guys punching and kicking a man in light blue clothes. The middle-aged man cursed. "Hit me. You, a poor scholar, dare to come to my place to redeem your things. I told you that you can only redeem your things if you have money. If you don't have money, don't come here." Seeing that the scholar was about to faint from being beaten, Bai Jin couldn't help but yelled, "Stop!" leaving man go, and stepped forward to push away those who were punching and kicking him and helped him up. She saw that his already unclean clothes became even messier after being kicked, and some places were even torn. Bai Jin suddenly became angry and pointed at some people in the pawn shop with piercing eyes. "You guys are going too far. You are just redeeming something, but you are beating someone. I will redeem whatever he wants to redeem for him." The man in light green clothes shook his head and refused after hearing this. "Miss, Shaoshun will collect the money right away. Thank you for your kindness, Shaoshun." Before he could finish speaking, Bai Jin took out the banknotes from her arms and gave them directly to the middle-aged man without knowing how much they were. The man immediately burst into laughter when he saw so many banknotes. He took out a green jade pendant from his arms and handed it to Bai Jin without saying a word. He quickly put the banknotes in his arms as if he was afraid that she would regret it. If you really want to ask how much those banknotes are, to tell you the truth, she doesn't know. She, a modern woman, doesn't know how to read banknotes. She just knows they are money. So I just stupidly gave him an extra 300 taels. The people watching the excitement dispersed when they saw that everything was all right. At this time, the man in light blue clothes raised his hands and said in a clumsy tone, "Thank you, miss, for helping me. I don't know where miss lives. I will send it to miss when I can collect enough money." After hearing him speak, Bai Jin realized that the man in light blue clothes was really handsome. A handsome and delicate face, a tall nose, thin lips, and dark eyes that make people fall deeply into it after just one glance. The light blue clothes he was wearing were somewhat tinged with white, giving him a worn-out look, and his movements gave him a nerdy air. "Here I go. This guy is so damn handsome." The saying that ancient times were rich in beautiful men is so true. Man Go, who was on the side, felt ashamed when she saw her princess drooling. If she hadn't seen the hibiscus flower birthmark on her body, she wouldn't have believed that this was her princess. The man in light green clothes blushed involuntarily when he saw Bai Jin staring at him. He looked at Bai Jin and didn't know where to put his eyes for a while. His awkward look made Bai Jin burst into laughter. This little scholar is so interesting that he is actually shy. The man in light blue clothes was so confused by her smile that he didn't even know what to do now. Seeing his awkwardness, Bai Jin couldn't help teasing him. She stretched out her fingers to slightly lift the chin of the man in light blue clothes and leaned forward, just as the tip of her nose was about to touch his cheek. Unexpectedly, Bai Jin turned away from his cheek and whispered in his ear, "Idiot." Then she immediately put him down, looking at his face as red as a boiled shrimp and laughing. "Well, ancient people were just interesting." He nodded. "Yeah, he's so handsome." Mange on the side heard her words and tugged on her sleeves and whispered, "Princess, you said it wrong." She was worried in her heart. Her princess's amnesia seems to be quite serious this time. Even talking is a bit out of place. She must hire a doctor for her when she gets back. Seeing that Man Ge kept tugging on her sleeves, Bai Jin turned around and whispered, "Why are you always tugging on my sleeves?" Apparently she didn't hear what Man Ge said just now. When the man in green clothes heard what Bai Jin said, his face turned red to the roots of his ears. He waved his hands hurriedly and said in a hurry, "Miss, this sentence is used to describe women." "Ha! To describe a woman? Isn't it right for her to describe the man?" He rolled his eyes and replied, "Why, I can't describe a man in this way. Who told you to be good-looking?" After saying that, he took Mange back to his house, as if he was running away. Didn't she run away and wait to be laughed at? Really, why is such a grown man so good-looking? She just blurted out that sentence. What a shame. When the man here saw Bai Jin leaving, he shouted, "Where does that young lady live? I'll collect the money so I can return the money to the young lady." But what came back to him were two figures running away. Munker Zhang was even more confused at this moment. He looked down at the jade pendant in his hand and decided that he would collect the money as soon as possible so that he could return the money to the lady. The moment he lowered his head, he caught a glimpse of the delicate wooden hairpin on the ground. He bent down to pick it up. It must have been accidentally dropped by the lady in her haste. Speaking of which, Bai Jin took Mango and fled back to the house. He immediately poured himself a cup of tea and drank it, panting heavily. Mange, why didn't you remind me just now? It was so embarrassing." Mange looked at her princess with an aggrieved look on her face. "Princess, I reminded you, but you didn't hear me. Why are you blaming me?" Upon hearing this, Bai Jin jumped up to Mange, grabbed Mange's ears, and said fiercely, "Okay, Mange, you are so brave. It seems that I have been too good to you these days, right?" Seeing that her princess was really angry, Mange immediately covered her ears and begged for mercy. "Princess, I was wrong. I will remind you loudly next time. Please spare me." Although she was begging for mercy, there was no trace of fear of begging for mercy on her face. It's more like an ordinary little fight. Since her princess lost her memory, she has become more and more fond of the current princess. Her personality has become lively and not as weak and quiet as before. Think about it. This way, the princess no longer has to suffer from the fact that she killed her mother and brother. The princess has been called the mother-in-law since she was born, and she is often ostracized by other princesses and princes. 2 years ago, she was selected by the Heavenly Master and was brought to the princess with His Majesty's permission. Her mission was to protect the princess, and this time she came to kiss her with another mission, which was to remind the princess not to forget the mission entrusted to her by her motherland. Seeing her begging for mercy, Bai Jin let go of the hand holding her ear, raised his eyebrows, and said with a smile, "You know how to beg for mercy? Then tell me how much I spent today. I always feel that I paid a lot to redeem the jade pendant for the scholar today." Thinking carefully about the thick stack of banknotes that he gave directly to the shopkeeper, he didn't know how much it was, but when he recalled the evil smile on the shopkeeper's face, he felt something was wrong. Mange thought for a while and counted with her fingers. "Princess, we took a total of 500 taels of silver notes when we went out. The wooden hairpin you bought was made of silver. The silver notes were not spent at all. The jade pendant alone is worth 200 taels at least." The princess directly gave the other 500 taels, so the princess gave the shopkeeper an extra 300 taels. After listening to Manji's words, Bai Jin suddenly became furious. "You are so awesome! Give me 300 taels more. Damn it! It really hurts, my 300 taels. How much does that cost? I won't be able to earn 300 taels for several years." He reached out and touched his sleeve pocket. "Huh? Here's my hairpin." I reached out and looked through it, but there was nothing. Turning to look at Mange. "Mange, is the wooden hairpin I bought at your place?" Chapter 4, Meeting a Poor Scholar on the Way. Mange looked confused. Why is the princess's hairpin here with the slave? Did the princess forget it somewhere? She also helped Bai Jin look for it. After a while, the master and servant looked at each other silently as they looked at the messy room. Bai Jin sat down on the ground. She now had the urge to hit someone. Her favorite wooden hairpin lost her 300 taels of silver and gave it to others in vain. "Ah! Oh my God! You're trying to kill me. My balls hurt." But just when Bai Jin wanted to beat someone up, the housekeeper came in and said, "Princess, you're ready?" Before he could finish his words, Bai Jin came to him and was beaten violently before he could react. Mange on the side saw this and hurriedly covered her head and slipped out. The princess was in a bad mood today. lest she accidentally hurt herself. It would be more than worth the gain. When Baijin felt a little better, she saw a monster with a bruised nose and a swollen face that looked like a pig's head screaming under her. She was so frightened that she punched the monster in the face again, causing her nose to bleed. Seeing that Baijin wanted to hit her, she yelled, "Princess, please stop hitting her. I'm the housekeeper. Stop hitting her." Hearing the pig-headed man below her say that he was the housekeeper, Baijin was so frightened that she jumped up from him, pointed at him, and said, "Butler, who beat you like this? Tell me, the princess, will avenge you." The butler covered his beaten, pig-headed face and said softly, "Princess, you are the one who beat me." He didn't know what mistake he had made. He wanted to tell the princess that the meal was ready and invite the princess to come and have a meal, but as soon as he came in, he was beaten well. Oops, what did he do wrong? Baijin looked confused when she heard what he said. She remembered that the person she was beating was obviously not a human being, so how could she become a human being? No wonder it feels so good when beaten. Her hand didn't feel any pain, so next time she'd hit her carefully. He stepped forward and touched her masterpiece, then smiled awkwardly. "Butler, why didn't you tell me earlier? Well, are you looking for something to do with me?" When the butler saw how treacherous she looked when she smiled, his hair stood up immediately. He immediately jumped out of the door and covered his face like an angry little daughter-in-law, saying, "It's okay. I just want to tell the princess that the meal is ready. Don't blame him for hiding away. He really didn't want to be beaten again." The princess had such an explosive temper that he felt her face was a little swollen. Baijin nodded in understanding and said, "Then you go down and have a rest and find a doctor to take a look." After that, he strode out. She seemed to have forgotten something as soon as she took a step, turned around and said with an apologetic expression, "Well, remember not to look in the mirror." She was kindly reminding him because she was afraid that he would collapse when he looked in the mirror. When they arrived at the front hall, Baijin had just poured out a bowl of soup when he heard a cry like a slaughtering pig,